Yeah, the reason to create trust in the first place was to have something that was a legal organization that was owned by the network. You can't do that with a normal company, but we did some research and we found out that the New Zealand trust law was very flexible and we could build something like that over there. And that's why we created the New Zealand trust. And then the protectors is a legal figure that the trust has, that it overviews the trust. And we thought it was important to make sure that this layer of the legal structure was controlled by the network. So the network has more options when controlling Dascore group. Right now, the network can always defund the company, but that's a very wild option, and it will maybe eventually be exercised, but probably very extreme circumstances need to happen for that. And we thought that it was better if there was also another option, which is this one, to have this body or this layer of the legal structure that can overview the board and eventually replace it. And that way, any network intervention into the Ashcore group can be more surgical and geared towards solving specific problems, and it doesn't need to be as drastic as defunding the organization. Okay, the first thing that needs to be clear is that trust protectors act as a group. They vote on everything and they act as one. They are 6, so for every decision they need to have at least a consensus of 4. And as for what the DAS protectors do as a group, again, I want to make that clear from the start. As a group, they overview the work that the DAS core group board is doing. This means that there is no day-to-day responsibilities. They just need to keep informed about what's happening around us. As for how much they need or how they do that, that's completely up to them. They decide how to organize their work, how many meetings they need to have, how much time they need to dedicate to this. It's remote meetings, like most meetings happening around the DAS ecosystem anyway. Or maybe they decide to do it in another way. But in any case, they can organize themselves. They overview the DAS core group board work, and they can, in certain circumstances, remove members of the board and replace them with others. They act in the name or in representation of masternodes, so they should only do what masternodes are signaling with their votes, but they have the power to execute those things that the masternodes may be saying or signaling through votes or any other mean they find to express themselves. Yeah, DAS core group's board, like any company's board, basically decides on the big lines of strategy of the organization, and also they overview they review the work of the CEO, who then would appoint the officers in the company to do day-to-day work. In our case, the board members are usually also doing day-to-day work, so it's a bit more mixed. So we could say it's like the top layer of management in the organization, and by replacing people there, you would be able to enact any other action into the organization. Yes, the election platform is being built at this moment by a couple of our developers. It's basically a very simple interface that will help masternode owners cast their votes. The votes are very similar to what proposals what we do with proposals every month, they will get the list, they will see the list of candidates, and they will be able to vote yes or no to each of them. That way, the 6 with more votes will be appointed protectors and will hold that role for a year until the next election is had. Yes, right now there is nothing to prevent from that in the trust bylaws, although if protectors wanted to change that, they can change that following certain procedures. There are a few provisions in the trust bylaws to regulate how this happens. There are very few cases in which a protector can be removed. They are mostly related with his or her mental health. If a couple doctors certificate that that person is not able to manage himself anymore, that would be one of the very few reasons. There is also another one about bankruptcy procedures that could hinder their ability to perform the duties of the role. And of course, by death or permanent any kind of incapability, um, they would not be able to perform their job anymore, and this is not something that can be inherited or passed to anyone else. The remaining protectors can determine how to replace that protector or can elect not to replace them and wait until the next election cycle. If the last one remaining, if for whatever reason people resign, because of course they can resign, if people resign or are removed for any reason, the last one has some more requisites to resign if he wanted, and he needs to set up a procedure. And if not, the trustee, who is a lawyer right now in Geneva that does the day-to-day business of the trust, which is not much anyway, would create a procedure to appoint at least one other protector. But how they replace or reorganize themselves, again, is up to them. They can decide how to do most of the things. Right now, there is no compensation for trust protectors. If the elected trust protectors want to be compensated, they should put their own proposal to the network, so the network decides if they should be paid or not. As for time commitment, there is no fixed time commitment or required time commitment at all. As I explained before, this is a position of responsibility for very specific situations, but there is no day-to-day time that needs to be allocated. Protectors will decide how much they want to meet or not. It doesn't make sense that they meet a lot, honestly, unless we are in a very deep crisis situation in which they need to intervene. Having said that, of course, DAS core groups board will be happy if they want to meet with them regularly every 2 or 3 months to give them long updates so they can be more up to date with what is happening inside Dashboard Group. But again, only they decide how and how much they work. Because of the responsibility they have, I expect or I hope every trust protector will be someone involved with Dash that can keep up with the reality of our ecosystem. But again, up to them. Yes, the trustee, who is, as I said before, the person that does the day-to-day business of the trust. In order to appoint any trust protector, needs to do some basic KYC and have the real identity of these people. So people who need to run or who decide to run need to assume that they need to provide some documentation. Then their names are going to be published in the candidates list. Just their names, nothing else, but that's information that some people are not comfortable providing. Also, Watch, who is overviewing the process, will have access to those names and will perform some basic checks upon candidacies, so they can be sure that whoever gets elected can then be appointed. So if someone is not comfortable with their real name being used, this is probably not the role for them. We would have loved to be able to not require this. We have people in the team who don't provide the real identity. We have people in the community who don't provide the real identity, and we're perfectly comfortable with this. But unfortunately, this is a legal requirement of this legal structure we have, so we can pass on it. Even if we accepted to have candidates running with fictitious names and somehow hide their identity and have someone check it, it would be a false sense of security, because those checkers, those people who check their identities, are a weak point in the chain and could break at some point and their identities would be out. So we prefer to be completely honest about this. Everyone who runs for the elections will have their names out and should assume so. Moreover, any beneficiary of the trust who is defined as all masternode owners, so any masternode owners who gets in contact with the trustee and proves he's a masternode owner could request the names of the protectors. So with that in mind, again, everyone who runs for the election needs to be comfortable with their names being public. If that's not the case, my recommendation is not to run, because it's not avoidable. During elections, no. And upon request of masternode owners to the trustee, no. So no in any case. However, even if it's only the name, people need to understand that if they are involved with the DAS community, they are leaving a trace every day with messages, with conversations. So even if you think you are very private and that only revealing your name will say very little, that's not the case. It's very easy to tie things together, and most of us know more about other people in the community than those other people realize, because we've all spent hours chatting with each other, days, weeks. So in all those conversations, there are small parts of your reality that you drop, sometimes unintentionally. So it's not just a name. We all know each other a lot. So again, if it's a concern of yours, well, everyone is entitled to make a decision, but your name is gonna be out. It's not avoidable. And with your name, other things could come behind. Yeah, I completely understand the concerns about identity, security, all that, because most of us who have put our names and our face to the project have had some kind of incident at some point that has made us feel uncomfortable. I mean, someone, even if it's just attacking yourself publicly and doing some research and finding something about you on LinkedIn, or in my case, or trying to do a phishing attack on you that went one step too far, things like that, because as you said, with a name and some more information you find here and there, it's pretty easy to learn more about any of us. So I completely understand it. I mean, I would have loved to be able to set up these so people could run with their usernames. Yes, we had some initial conversations with Jeff from Das Nexus to create this platform we are creating now inside of Das Nexus, because he already had a lot of the work that needed to be done in terms of having masternodes having the capability to register themselves and then cast votes. And then it was an obvious extension of his system. However, uh, because of time pressure and also him being focused on other priorities, it was not feasible to do it for this time. These type of elections are going to happen more yearly for trust protectors, but also for DAS ventures, there needs to be some elections, and maybe there will be more use cases in which we want, or someone wants to get the opinion of masternode owners, but not necessarily go through the treasury proposal system, because that has a very specific design, which is great for certain things, but maybe not perfect for others. So having this kind of flexibility and different path to get the opinion of masternode owners or the decision of masternode owners, we believe is great. Hopefully in the future, these will be expanded and maybe integrated in Das Nexus or any other platform that we are using at that time. But short term, there are no plans yet besides uh, getting these elections out of the way, and then we'll deal with the next one and we'll see how this evolves, because if something we know about this space is that it changes very fast, and whatever we think we need today, it's probably not what we will need in a couple of years. Sure. As you said, February 24th is the limit for candidates to step forward and get in contact with Dashwatch and uh, submit their candidacies. Then in early March, Dashwatch will publish the final list of candidates that will be running for the election. That date will also make available a section in the forum for discussions uh, around this topic. Although obviously people can discuss wherever they prefer, be it Discord forum, Twitter, Reddit. Everyone can do whatever they want. I expect probably for the people who do reporting on our community to uh, report on this, talk with candidates, but that's a completely decentralized process, so can't really predict how that will go. And then when the candidates list is published, we'll also make available the platform to cast votes by masternode owners, but in reality, votes are like the votes on proposals. You can cast anytime, but the one that counts is the one at the closing date, which in this case is March 31st. So whatever you have voted at that time, uh, the last vote you casted until that time, that's the one that counts. You could vote something on March 15th and then change it in the 20th, and then you don't change it again, and your vote on the 20th is the one that counts. So that last vote of masternodes who are online on March 31st is the one that will be counted, and as soon as possible we'll publish the results. We can't really say if it will be April 1st, 2nd, or 3rd, because we don't know how many votes we'll get and the problems that we may found tallying them, but it will be as fast as possible. So I would not expect that to take more than a day or two in normal circumstances. is they would just need to communicate that to the board and the trustee, and the legal agreements that need to be put in place would be put in place by the trustee, who executes the will of the trust, and he would notify the board that this or that member or every member has been removed, and that would be it. It would be pretty simple. Yeah, there needs to be a majority. So 3-3, it's a split one. That's one of the reasons that we went for the 6 number, because it really requires people to discuss and convince each other. Usually we believe that, I mean, unanimity is the best thing in a group like this, because that means that it's an obvious decision. If there is some split, they need to work to convince each other. And then 4-2 is good enough. But 3-3, it's a no decision situation. Yeah, in this case also there could be that, I mean, someone is not present or doesn't take the role seriously, doesn't attend the meetings, and then it's a 3-2. That can be the case, but 6 leaves room for one of those not really appearing, and you still need 3-2, which is a decent majority. If you had fewer and someone disappears for whatever reason, you start to look at it as a very complicated thing. And in any case, even if worst case happens and 3 people disappear and we end up with a protectors layer which is controlled by 2 bosses, and they replace the board and they fire the board and whatever, I mean, we can always create another legal entity and people go work for it, and that group is an empty cell. I mean, it would be an expensive thing because we would need to recreate some legal structure and maybe there will be some money in the bank and things like that. But I mean, no one is a slave to that group. So if something happened, that'd be okay. I mean, not okay, but it's not the end of the world, or the end of the project. Yeah. Not really, just maybe insist on the fact that this is not a day-to-day job. It's a responsibility. It's a role to be there for the network in case you are needed. And as such, it should be treated seriously, because in case of protectors being needed because the board is not acting as they should, they need to step in. So in day-to-day, there's no responsibility, but if at some point they need to really work and replace someone and appoint new board directors, that's a big thing that could affect us very seriously. So this is a role for people who really care about that.